Hello explorers and welcome to another video. Today we are going to talk about Pybox and how to deploy applications to it. And let's just switch over to my screen here and see the actual interface of the Pybox. I talked about this on a video for a couple of weeks ago, and this is the install script that you can run, and here you have different recipes that you can install, or different templates. So let's take this Tandoor recipe and do an install here, and yeah, I want to install it, and it will give me this nice animation and then run a bunch of things here to install it. So this is all the different Kubernetes things that will be pushed up and started and so on in order to get this running. And you also have this launch button here. If I run that, it will jump over here, and at the moment it's a bad gateway, but as soon as everything has started, so we go over here and see, it will be running a bunch of things here to get things up and running, and whenever that is done, we can actually go to that address and look at it. So now we see that it actually has run everything and also started this application. So let's push launch application again, and we get to a setup screen after a while. It first boot when we're running things, it can take some extra time to actually render all the resources and so on. But here you see I have a Tandoor application up and running. Everything is just fine. It's there. So that is an easy one install application, but of course I want to take it one step further. I want to understand how these specific templates are working, so I built my own. I have a video where I talk about the basics of Kubernetes, and I explain how to create this Munin service, and that is what I reused here. So I have already this Munin service on Docker Hub. We have version 11 here. It's tagged up. It was pushed 4 minutes ago, and this is my own app template. So we have public apps, my apps, and my apps here we have the Munin template. You need to add, or could add, some image and some name and so on, description to this. And here you have a little checklist where they will check for different things that are good to have. So for instance, this must be an image that is ARM64, or else you can't install it. And this works exactly the same. And you see here that I already have a persistent volume Munin data. So I have already run this a bunch of times, and I keep the data each time. So I just do an uninstall, and then it will not remove the data instances. It will only remove the application. So if I run install here, we will have a similar process. We'll show this animation, run and install, and push up a bunch of different things. And we see down here under this layout here that we have green check marks now. So what is it that we have installed? We have, for instance, this volume claim here, 1 GB of data. We have a service, and this service will take port 80 from a specific pod, in this case the pod Munin, and then expose port 80 inside of the Kubernetes cluster. And then I need to say that from the Kubernetes cluster I want to put it out on the internet, and this is this ingress. So it says that the service Munin, the service port, should be exposed under this specific web address. And the pod that is running is in this deployment here. So here we can see the status of my deployment. And here we also have everything again, so we can see the different parts of it. And if we go here and click launch, we will see my application, and we can see the disk statistics, for instance, that I have had for a couple of days here now. So this is pretty much how to install this template. So let's look at the actual file, because a template here is just a Kubernetes file that configures how it should be deployed. So let's edit the YAML here and look at this. So first off, we have a deployment. It has a specific API versions, and these versions are evolving all the time, so you need to keep track on which one you want to use, and it's pretty much a specification version. So when they add things, they will bump the version, And if they remove things, they will actually probably change name of it and say that now we have a different template version, so the API will be totally different. What we need to put here first is a name in the metadata and a label, so we can find the specific pod from other things when we are running it. Then we have a bunch of annotations here, not important. It's specific to this kubectl deployment in my Pybox, but it's my name and my editor, my user ID. And then we have a spec here. And this is the specification how to deploy this specific pod. I want one replica, which means that there should only be one instance of it. If you have something that demand a lot of different traffic and you have a load balancer between them, you can have 5 replicas. Or if you're running a background job that picks jobs in order to run it in a good way in parallel, you can have multiple replicas. But here we have only one replica. Every time I restart this, I want the pod to be recreated. I don't want to keep anything locally. The local information will be in the specific mounted drive, but I want to recreate the specific pod. Then I want to use a selector for this app. So this is a label for this specific app. And here we see the metadata for this app is Moonin. So this replica will pick this app that is in this template. And the specification for this app is this container here that I give the name Moonin, and it will use this image. And that was the image that we saw earlier on Docker Hub, a specific tag there. And then I want the image pull policy to be if not present. So if we don't have this already downloaded into our cache, get it again. Then I want to expose a couple of ports here, and this I call the pod port, and this is container port 80 and protocol TCP. So that is the available port on this pod. I want a volume mount, so I want to mount a specific volume to this, and this is where the data for Moonin is stored, and I call this the Moonin data volume, and it should be connected to the claim that I have. So Moonin data volume is a volume that is connected to this persistent claim. And that is what this 1 gigabyte drive that we have here is, this specific named claim here down here. So that was the pod. So now we have started the application and connected everything. Now we need to have the definition of the service that we talked about, that take the pod port and gives access to it to the rest of the cluster. And service have an API version and kind. We have metadata, the name and the label app Moonin, so it will be in the same context as the pod. And then we have annotations, not important. The specification for this is just a bunch of ports. So we have a port here, the service port, and it has the protocol TCP, it's port 80, and the target port that we want to look for inside of our Kubernetes cluster is the pod port. That is what we had up in the pod here. So this pod port will be the target port down here. So if the cluster looks anywhere for the service port 80 inside of Kubernetes, it will find this pod port here. And then I have this selector for app Moonin again. So it will actually find this specific application. And then we have an ingress. And I have API version down here. Could be up here, doesn't really matter. So it's a kind of ingress. We have the metadata again, same here, name and labels. We have then annotations. Here I've added this specific annotation, TLS Acme true and let's encrypt. And this is also specific to this specific installation, because in a Pybox, they have Let's Encrypt modules already installed, so why not use it? If we have Let's Encrypt, I want to have a valid certificate so I don't get any errors when I go there with HTTPS. So these two annotations will help out there and create a certificate for me so I can actually go in and use HTTPS. Then we have a specification for this a little ingress here. First off, we want TLS and host, and this host that the TLS should be available under is Munin and then the cluster address. So this is what makes it available in this Munin homebox, kalasbuffer and so on, so we can actually see it on that address. So that is how you use, in this specific application, you have this specific parameter that it will look for and replace here. So they are using this kind of annotation for that. The same goes for this rule here with host, and it should have this service port exposed here. So HTTP paths, path type implementation specific. The backend should be the service named Munin on the service port. So that's how you specify in Pybox to get an ingress into your cluster. Last but not least, we have the persistent volume claim, and it has the API version 1 again. And the metadata is the name that we used before, Munin data, and we use the label of @Munin again, so we are in the same context. Annotations is just my user ID again. And then we have the specification. Access mode should be read write once in this case. So it's not that you can't read and write to it multiple times. It's just that you can't read and write from multiple instances. So if you have a bunch of different pods, you are not allowed to write to the same file at the same time. So, because we are running just one pod, one replica, it's good to have this access mode so somebody else doesn't start up a pod and tries to write the same data as you are doing and you get conflicts. So this is only allowed to be mounted once as read-write only. So you can't mount it multiple times. And then you have a request here. How much storage do I want to request? And in this case, on this Pybox, we have a specific drive that is mounted to it that I can claim a specific amount of data on. I have terabytes of data on that drive, so requesting 1 gigabyte is not much at all. But most of these templates that you have will request a bunch of different values. So if we go back to our app store here again and look at the apps, so this deployment of recipes here, for instance, if we look at volumes, it has requested a media volume, a static volume, and a DB volume, and all of those are 5 gigabytes in size. So when you're installing a specific template, it's good to actually go in and look for what do you want to install here. This one wants a configuration directory of 100 megabytes and a server project of 5 gigabytes. And if you have a smaller drive connected to your Pybox, then this will be an issue for you because you might not be able to install this application if you don't have enough storage drive. So this was what I wanted to cover today. I think this is a really interesting project if you want to run a bunch of different services locally but make them available online for everyone to use. So if you want to set up your own web server or want to deploy some application that you will use in your day-to-day work, for instance, a code servers or a Nextcloud or something like that, this is a really good, simple way to do it. It's a one-click install, and if you need something more custom, then create your own template, and that will be available for you as well. I hope that you found this video interesting. I hope that you learned something today. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them down in the comment section down below. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends and colleagues. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and I really hope to see you in the next video.